Welcome back to the Jonestead. I'm Mary. Today is Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. Fox Business reported today the federal budget deficit projected to hit $2 trillion this fiscal year, ranking among the largest in U.S. history. And the article stated, earlier this month, the Treasury released its quarterly refunding documents for the second quarter of the calendar year, which included estimates of a needed borrowing over the next 2 quarters of fiscal year 2026 as of April. That report showed the White House is anticipating a roughly $2.1 trillion deficit in FY 2026. This is up from the estimate of about $1.8 trillion that was produced by the Congressional Budget Office. Also, a federal deficit of $2 trillion or more in fiscal year 2026 would rank it as the third largest in U.S. history. And the largest was during COVID in 2020, and that deficit was $3.1 trillion. And then in 2021, $2.8 trillion because of the stimulus spending, all the money that went flying out because of the co-flu. Anyway, and also remember data from the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis showed the U.S. national debt surpassed the size of the economy in April. So this is absolutely unsustainable and out of control. This is not a winning. This is not a winning scenario for the country at all. And also, this was an AP News. The bond market is sending out warning signals. And the article went on to say bond markets around the world have seen yields climb to heights not reached in years, and in some cases, decades. And reasons for that is oil prices, worries about big and growing debts for the U.S. government, and also ongoing instabilities. And in the U.S., the 10-year Treasury yield has topped 4.6%, and it was 4% before the Iran conflict, whatever they're calling it, started. So I think we're on the 81st day of what was going to be 24 hours. Anyway, and the article went on to say other kinds of yields are even higher. The 30-year Treasury yield is above 5% and is back where it was in 2007, before the 2008 financial crisis sent yields crashing towards zero worldwide. And if you remember, in 2008, there was an absolute just a financial meltdown, and you had a complete freeze. There's a lack of liquidity in the system. You had the housing bubble collapse because they had loaned. There was so much subprime borrowing. But even what was a bigger problem that just made everything worse was you had the mortgage-backed securities. And so they are bundling all these risky loans together, and people were defaulting. And back then, so you have people buying homes or multiple homes where they either had no income or they had barely the income that would qualify them, but they were getting them anyway. They also were getting adjustable rate mortgage loans, which so they could afford whatever that rate was at that moment. But as soon as all of a sudden their mortgage rate, because the interest rates went up, they couldn't afford their mortgage rate, and the value of their house had collapsed. And a lot of people just walked away from their homes. And other things that happened during that time, literally construction projects, the financial institutions would just stop. They would stop the loan, or they would call notes right away. And if the people couldn't produce the money, they would foreclose on that loan. Just the lender didn't do anything, just the bank didn't want that risk out there. And so you had a lot of people got hurt during that scenario. And then something that's important to think about back then, I think our country's in much more dire straits now. Back then in 2008, the U.S. national debt was $9.99 trillion, whereas now we're almost at $30 trillion. But the U.S. consumer is in significantly higher percentages of debt, and we're dealing with very high inflation right now, as well as fuel prices. And I saw when last I checked on the crude, I think the Brent crude is like 104, and the U.S. crude is a little bit below 100, but it's still up there, and there's still a lot of uncertainty going on. But it's really important for people to understand that the way the system, or the way our government is spending, and the way the economy, as far as just printing money, and then but we're, with the yields going up, we're really putting our national economy at risk, and that is going to trickle down, and that is going to hurt the citizens of the United States. And a lot of people assume that the people in power know what they're doing, the economists and this and that. Well, if you look at how the system is operating, they aren't doing us any favors, and they're bankrupting the United States of America. And until we start seeing policies and approaches from our leadership, instead of continuing to spend money, they need to start paying down the debt, so that the United States can become financially stable again. And I think that's what people say, oh, you're so doom and gloom, why are you focusing on all this? The reason is I used to think that people in these positions knew they had the best interest of the American people at heart. And we've seen it over and over the years that is not the case. And so that's why it's important for us to be aware of that, acknowledge that. That's hard to have to come to terms with once you see it. But also protect yourself, so that all this storm that's going on around us, the economic storm, you are able to weather that storm. And again, I talk about this in almost every video. Try to be as debt-free as possible. We don't need every shiny toy to impress people that don't care. And I remember somebody saying, well, I'm worried about what so-and-so thinks about me. And they're like, don't worry about that. They're just worried about what everyone else is thinking of them. So, but again, they don't pay your bills. And you need to, the best thing you can do is put yourself and your family in a position where you're able to weather the storm again, where you're financially secure best you can, put some savings aside, get out of debt, put some extra food in the pantry, make sure food in the pantry, extra water. If you can grow some things as a supplement, and or if you can have chickens, you can have eggs in your backyard instead of depending on supply and costs at the grocery store. So anyway, but I think it's important for people to be aware of what's going on, because these things, when 2008 was like a financial tsunami to a lot of people. It hit us broadside, and we know a lot of people, particularly in building and in banking and development, and they were wiped out. And a lot of people also that weren't necessarily getting hit from their business standpoint, their 401ks got slammed and to like 50% value. And so people are now, some people still haven't even recovered from that. And so again, and also talking about 401ks, don't have all your eggs in one basket. Don't put have all of your money in one bank. And again, as I've reminded people, don't keep more than $250,000 in one bank account, because if it exceeds that, it's not insured by the FDIC. But also look at diversification into precious metals. I'm not a financial advisor. These are things I've read and I've learned about and studying. And we have a fiat currency that could eventually be worth nothing. We saw what happened in Venezuela. And gold and silver and other precious metals are never going to be worth zero, and they're also global. So anyway, I thank you all for watching. I hope you found some of this information helpful. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. There goes my voice again. Have a great day.